Hi, I'm Susan Rutledge, author of Creating Pattern Brushes in Adobe Illustrator, here today with another tutorial on how to make a pattern brush. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and check my book out on Amazon.com. In this video, I'm going to continue talking about the side tiles and the bounding boxes, and in this first example, I'll show you where a bounding box is really necessary in order to have your pattern brush turn out seamless. I'm going to design the first side tile using the rectangle tool. I'll hold the shift key down so I have a square, and I'm going to apply a pink fill and a black 10-point stroke. Then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to move into the outline viewing mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y. And I'll grab my square and I'm going to hold down the shift and option keys and drag until they intersect and then release my mouse. Now I'll select both of the squares and do the same thing, dragging down this time, hold down shift and option keys, and when they intersect, I'll release my mouse. Now I'll move back into the preview mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y, and I'm going to change a couple of the colors. I'll select the top right square and then hold down my shift key so I can select the bottom left square as well. I'll come to the properties panel and I'm going to give that a different color. And then I'll select all four of the squares and I'm going to group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now I'll open the brushes panel and I'm going to drag this design into the brushes panel and I'll select pattern brush, OK. I'm going to name this multicolor 1 and say OK. Now let's move this out of the way. I'll get the line segment tool, keyboard shortcut backslash, and I'll hold down the shift key so that my line is horizontal. I'm going to click on the multicolor 1 pattern brush and instantly it's applied to the path, and we can see that we definitely do not have a seamless pattern brush. Illustrator did exactly what I asked it to do. It's repeating this design, putting one tile after another, and so what I end up with is a double thickness in between each of the repeats, and that's not what I want. I'm going to have to add a bounding box. So let's delete this path, delete this second tile, and I'll drag this down into the center of our artboard, and then I'm going to move into the outline viewing mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y. So to add a bounding box, we add an invisible rectangle. I need to first deselect this because if I don't and I go to remove the color in the fill, it's going to make my design completely invisible as well. So I'll click on the artboard and then I'm going to select the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, come to the properties panel, and I'll remove this stroke. And then I'm going to start drawing in the top left corner at the anchor point and drag down to the bottom anchor and release my mouse. And first I need to place the bounding box behind the design, and I'll use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket. Then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'll select the bounding box and the design and I'll group them together using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now I'll move back into the preview mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y. Now drag this up out of the way and I'm going to drag and drop this into the brushes panel. I'll click pattern brush and say OK, and this is going to be multicolor 2. And I'll say OK. Okay, once again, I'll get the line segment tool, keyboard shortcut backslash, drag out a horizontal line by holding my shift key down, and I'll click on multicolor 2 and get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and drag this up. This time we do have a perfectly seamless pattern brush. There are no extra thick lines, and this was exactly what I wanted to do. In this instance, you see that when you have a side tile that has any kind of a stroke, you probably need to place it in a bounding box so that your pattern brush is seamless. In this next example, I'm going to use one single object as a side tile design, and we'll see if we need a bounding box for it. First, I'm going to recenter my artboard. I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command 0. Then I'll go over and get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M. I'm going to drag a rectangle out on the board, and I'm going to give it a red fill and a black 2-point stroke. Now I'll get the direct selection tool, keyboard shortcut A, and drag the handles to the center to round those corners. I'll rotate this object using the rotate tool, keyboard shortcut R. I'll hold down my shift key as I drag, and I'm going to drag to a 45-degree angle and release my mouse. Then I'm going to repeat this process. This time I'm going to hold down both the shift and option keys because I'm going to make a copy, and I'll drag to a 90-degree angle and release my mouse. I'm going to get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'll select both of these objects. I'll go to the properties panel, and in the Pathfinder area I'm going to click on the ellipsis, and that will bring up the divide tool, and I'm going to click on that. When I select these, you can see that I have multiple objects now instead of the 2 objects that I started with, and I can delete any of those once I ungroup this. So I'll use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command G, and then I can select just the items that I don't want. I want to make this one piece, and so I'll select the remaining pieces. I'll come over to the properties panel, and I'm going to click on the Unite Pathfinder tool. All right, now I'll move this up out of the way a little bit, and this is really too big for a pattern brush for my artboard, so I'm going to reduce it before I make it into a pattern brush. I'll go up to Object, Transform, Scale, and I have Uniform Scale checked. 50% is going to be fine. I also have Scale Corners and Scale Strokes and Effects checked. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm ready to open the Brushes panel, and I'm going to drag my heart into this panel. I'll select Pattern Brush and say OK. I'm going to name this Heart 1 and say OK. And then I'm going to select the Ellipse tool, keyboard shortcut L, drag out an ellipse. I need to go to the Properties panel and remove the fill color, and then back to the Brushes panel, and I'll click on Heart 1, and it has applied it to the path. Now this is a seamless design. What I have is my heart side to side repeating, and that looks fine if that's what I want, but if I want to have a space between the hearts, I can do it in one of 2 ways. So I'm going to first of all hide this layer, and then I'm going to go back to our heart, move it down to the center, deselect it, and move into the outline viewing mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y. And I'm going to add a bounding box to add some spacing to the heart. So I'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, and I'll open the properties panel. I need to remove the fill and remove the stroke. And I'm going to come over here at the intersection of the left and top part of the heart, and I'll drag down, catching the bottom, and then I'm going to add space on the right side, which is the space I want between each of the hearts. I'll release my mouse. Now I need to move the bounding box behind the design, so I'll use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket, and then move back into the preview mode, keyboard shortcut Command Y. I get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to just select both the design and the bounding box. I'm going to group them, and I'll use keyboard shortcut Command G. We'll move this up out of the way. I'll open the Brushes panel, and we're going to drag our heart into the brushes panel, and I'll select pattern brush, say OK. I'm going to name this heart 2 and say OK. And now let's come back to the layers panel and we'll unhide our design. Go to the brushes panel. I need to select this, and I'm going to click on heart 2. And now I have a seamless pattern brush that is evenly spaced as I ask the bounding box to do. So this is one way to space it. Let me show you another way. Let's select this and come back to heart 1. And with this path selected, I can come down to this little icon in the bottom of the brushes panel, and it allows me to make some changes to the brush that's here. So I have scale to fixed, but I'm going to change the spacing. And I'm going to type in 25%, and then I'm going to say OK. And immediately I have spacing in between each of my hearts. And the difference between doing it this way and using the Heart Brush 2 pattern brush with the bounding box is, if I want to change this, I don't have to go back and make a new bounding box. I can simply come back down to the little icon and I can type in 15%, say OK, and it moves it closer. The other thing to know is that you're only changing this stroke. And if I come back and I click on heart 1 again, it's back where it was. So I'm not changing the pattern brush, I'm just altering the selected one on the artboard. In this instance, you can pretty much get by with using the single object, not drawing a bounding box, and then adjusting your spacing using this handy little tool here on the brushes panel. So now I've shown you an instance where you definitely need a bounding box for your pattern brush to be seamless, and another example where you can use a bounding box to adjust spacing, but you can also do it in a faster and simpler way. In the next video, I'm going to begin talking about the corner tiles, because when you add any kind of a pattern brush to a rectangle, you need a corner tile. So thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Bye now.